Breaking news now, the Westpac CEO Brian Hartzer has stepped down as CEO of the company, and Chief Financial Officer Peter King will be taking over as acting CEO, which will be effective from next Monday, the 2nd of December. So quite a turnaround following suggestions that he was going to dig his heels in. There is a quote that has come through to us. The board accepts the gravity of the issues raised by AUSTRAC. As was appropriate, we sought feedback from all our stakeholders, including shareholders, and having done so, it became clear that board and management changes were in the best interest of the bank.
Yeah, this has been announced to the ASX this morning, and obviously there's been quite a turnaround in the last 24 hours. Interestingly enough, this announcement to the ASX in this press release says Westpac Group Chairman Lindsay Maxted, it starts this way today, announced a number of executive and board changes in the wake of the AUSTRAC statement of claim. Not quite burying the lead there, but pretty close too. Now, Brian Hartzer told executives, according to the Australian newspaper, just 24 hours ago to stay calm, that this was no Enron crisis, that this wasn't having an effect on High Street. The Christmas party was cancelled, and it was important, he said, quote unquote, to show the public we are prepared to give up revenue to show remorse. Well, he is giving up revenue today. As we know, his salary every year is millions of dollars. He gets paid tens of thousands of dollars every day. That is no longer. Yeah,
well, just on that, as part of the exit arrangement for the outgoing CEO, so not only will he step down on the 2nd of December 2019, which is next Monday, he's been given 12 months' notice and will be paid his fixed remuneration of $2.686 million over this period. Both Mr. Hartzer's unvested deferred short-term variable reward and unvested long-term variable reward will be forfeited. In addition to foregoing his FY19 short-term variable reward, Mr. Hartzer will also not be eligible for short-time variable reward for the
interestingly enough,
year ending.
As well, Pete, Westpac says it will not proceed to seek shareholder approval for the financial year 2020 long-term variable reward outlined in the 2019 AGM. So, look, this has been quite a turnaround today. The pressure has been mounting, as you well know, and this is where it has ended up today. The breaking news, Westpac CEO Brian Hartzer stepping down. Let's go live to Annalise Nielsen, who has covered this quite extensively, including writing a book on the Royal Commission. Now, Annalise, take us back, really, I guess, to the beginning here. Westpac was under pressure during the Royal Commission. It's been even worse over the last week about these 23 million breaches. Brian Hartzer says, no, he's not going anywhere. But this morning, that is not the case.
It's just a tale as old as time, isn't it? But you're right, this did start all with the Banking Royal Commission. There was a significant pressure on Westpac after that. They weren't necessarily the worst performers in the Banking Royal Commission, but some of the worst case studies really did relate to them. You'll remember the nurse Jacqueline McDowell, who went for financial advice from a Westpac advisor and was basically told a completely impossible scenario, lost everything. That was a Westpac advisor. They were under pressure from then, from the shareholders, really, and that's really been the focus for Westpac this year. Their profits were down. They were posting a much lower profit than they should have, and that saw the first strike against their remuneration package at the AGM. That was the big concern for Westpac here. It's not that the punters that were concerned. That's what we've been seeing in these comments published in the Australian today from these internal meetings. They were saying it's not a bread and butter issue, and that's what I've heard from a number of people in banking. They were saying that no one's going to go and take their money out of Westpac over this scandal, even though it does involve just the most hideous of crimes like child abuse. But investors were making their voices heard, and that was their concern. Their AGM was in just a few weeks. If there was another vote against their remuneration package, the executives still weren't getting their bonuses, but it could also trigger a full spill of the board, and that would leave every position open. It would leave them very vulnerable to who was voted in, and clearly the pressure was starting to show. They thought this was going to blow over in a few days. We saw them very hesitant to engage in any media. The only press conference we had was a phone hookup, which is pretty standard in business journalism, but this is not a business story. story. This is a real puncher story when it comes to these horrific allegations from Austrac, but also just one pre-recorded video posted on Sunday. That's something that we don't play as a policy because it looks like they're fronting up for questions when they're not, but it was part of their bunker down strategy. Clearly this morning hasn't worked.
Good policy.
Yeah, so Annalise, how are you reading between the lines there? I mean, as you just referred to, those comments in the Australian today, you know, talking about how we can't go ahead with this Christmas party this year because it's a bad look. You know, this isn't so bad out in the high street while the media is talking about it. Most, you know, common folk, if we can use that term, aren't really bothered by it. It looked like he was digging in, but then just a few hours later, he's gone, the chair's gone, big changes happen. So what do you think has happened there? How have you read into that?
Well, what I was being told was that this was very much on the cards from the get-go, but they wanted the time to be able to put someone in that could hold that place until they could figure out a longer-term strategy, because if your CEO goes overnight, it just leaves you completely exposed. Who's leading the company? And so it is interesting that they do have the current Chief Operating Officer, Gary Thursby, acting as CFO, and their CFO, Peter King, taking over as CEO. So that's part of their interim plan. They're going to have a longer-term strategy, because the key issue with these things is you can mess up, but if it's systemic, that's a killer, because the systems have been in place for a long time. You should have known about it and you didn't do anything about it. And when it comes to things as serious as knowing about child exploitation and sitting on it, that's as bad as it gets. And so this was pretty expected in one sense, but it was pretty extraordinary to see just that kind of lack of contrition, and that's exactly what we saw with NAB take out their chair and CEO as well.
Yeah, it looks like he was pushed this morning.
For sure, yeah. I mean, Adam Crichton, we were talking about an hour ago, and we were talking about ego and hubris, and you know, it looks like he's just fallen on his sword at the end of the day.
Well, it's more money as well. Like, he was in line for much bigger remuneration if he could have held on. The Oz had a really interesting breakdown saying that if he'd managed to hold on through to the next year, he was liable for bonuses up to $21 million.
Wow.
And I know this just sounds like kind of stupid numbers for normal people, that that kind of money is just unheard of.
It's
and this
well
guy
short of
feels
his
hard done by, because he only got $5 million last year. So
yeah, well, it falls well short of his fixed remuneration of $2.686 million, which was what he'll be given out, which is what he'll be paid out, according to the release.
Rough
anyway.
Christmas, you know?
Yeah. Annalise, thank you.